Yeah, but it has to be able to drip in. You can't be perfect. Because, you can't stop. I was just thinking if you do it perfectly, like if you would do bamboos, and you would put, half pipes down, and then you put the other half over the center. But that would be considered a roof. That would be problematic.
In our sukkah this is like 12 at night on the table all over the place.
What is that from?
Reflection of the light through the bamboo. My kids are freaked, don't understand exactly how it happened. It's all over the house. Big ones.
Someone's sending you messages.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, this is David's all in sukkah.
All over.
The light through the bamboo everywhere around the sukkah.
It's just wow.
I think I know what it is.
Look at that.
I think I know what it is.
So beautiful.
I think because the bamboo, it's a bamboo mat, right?
Yeah.
I think the way they knotted the.
I don't know. It was just some more. Something that was very kosher bamboo mat.
Okay, where are we holding over here? None base. We're going to start from Boimini Ravacha Bar Rav Huna Mirava. It's a little bit before the Mishnah. It's a few lines up from the Mishnah. Ravach, we thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. Especially if our learning, we should have the base of English. So Ravacha Bar Rav Huna asks Rav a question. So is that the original Rav Huna? Maybe. Sure. But there's a slight generation gap if it is. It's probably a later Rav Huna. So he asked him a question. What we were discussing prior to this was if someone gave presents, but we don't know about any Kiddushin, or maybe earlier to that, there was a Kiddushin, but it wasn't enough, and the presents maybe will fill in for the missing pruta, right? So afterwards, would that make the Kiddushin? And then, okay, but now we're talking about if there's a ksuba. Someone found a ksuba for this woman, and does that mean that she's married? Amalei, so he responds, Ravacha Bar Rav Huna responds, just because there's a ksuba, that means that she's a married woman. So it was just a monetary document. Someone wrote it. It doesn't mean she's married. It means that this guy was getting ready to marry her. He wrote up a ksuba, and it never worked out.
Maybe there's another person.
Right. A get is very different than a ksuba, because a get is actually what actually causes the divorce. The ksuba does not cause the marriage. It's just a document that says that if they get married and get divorced, then this is what he's going to pay. So what does the ksuba do? What does it show us, really? The Gemara now says, "My havi Allah." So what's the conclusion of this? Well, Amar Ravashi. Ravashi says like this: if it's a place that they never write a ksuba before a Kiddushin, when you go to the cipher, to get a ksuba written, he says, "Well, show me the Kiddushin. Show me a paper that says, bring witnesses that you're married, and I'll write you a ksuba," or something like that. That's the way it's done. The ksuba is always written after the Kiddushin. Why? Because the Kiddushin was done a year before the Nesuin. The ksuba was written by the Nesuin. So they would never write a ksuba before the Kiddushin. It's like a year early. Well, so then we have to suspect that maybe she's married, because we did find the ksuba. But if it's a place where they first write the ksuba and then they do the Kiddushin, so then we shouldn't be suspected to any marriage over here, because that's normal to write a ksuba first. If the only time that they would write a ksuba is after the Kiddushin, then of course this is a reason to be concerned. Gemara says, talking about over here that really they would never write a ksuba before a Kiddushin. Only thing is that they don't have a cipher in town. The cipher was passing through town, and the father said, let's make sure that this that we get the ksuba taken care of now, so because the guys, we don't know when he's going to be back.
But does the cipher have to write the ksuba?
No, you don't need a cipher, but just
Who
knew how to write. So you know how to read. So Safru Disrami Kamash Malan. So it comes to tell us that we do suspect for Kiddushin. We do suspect for Kiddushin. Sorry? Oh, it does have to be written with the feather? Not a ksuba, no. A ksuba could be printed.
So when did it stop
The
that?
printer came to town.
I wonder what you're supposed to do with it after finding it in the shuk.
Like, who do you return it to? That Mishnah in,
Exactly.
yeah, that's that in Bab Metzia, there's a whole discussion about that.
Uh-huh.
Remember, it says if you find a bunch of documents together, they all have the same lender on it. Ksuba. The ksuba. The woman, it's her document. She holds it. It's like a promissory note in the hands of someone else. No, it's just a monetary document. This is how they're gonna. It's like a prenuptial. Like a prenup is not a marriage, right? It just says like what they'll do in case of a divorce. So that's a ksuba. Okay. The new Mishnah, and very famous Mishnah. We'll see. Are you learning Elam Mitzias? What are you learning? Oh, what grade are you? You're in 6th grade. Last year. So we'll have something in common with Elam Mitzias shortly. Makadashi Shubita. Someone gives Kiddushin to a woman and her daughter. A Yeshiva Chayser to a woman and her sister. Now, what's the problem? That if he marries one, he can't marry the other one. Because he can't marry, he can marry 2 women, but he can't marry a woman and her daughter.
So if you do
And he
that
can't
both
marry
are
2
nullable.
sisters. So if you do them both at the same time, it totally doesn't work. They're not, he's not married to any of them.
For the price of one, do we have that?
Yeah, we had 2 for the price of 1, but here these are 2. The first one would have been eligible. The second one would not. It's only because he married the first one that he can't marry the second one, right? That's
At the same time,
and if he does it at the same time, then it doesn't work. That we'll see shortly. Ma'aseh b'chamish nashim. There's a story. There were 5 women. B'hem shtei achayos, and there were 2 sisters amongst them. That means, I guess, 3 other women. And v'likid adam echad kalkala shel te'ena v'shelahem haisa v'shel shvias haisa. We'll see hopefully tomorrow why that's significant. But one person takes a bundle of figs, which was theirs, but it was from the Shemitah year, and he takes it because in Shemitah it's Hefker. So he takes it and he hands it to them. All of you should be married to me with this, betrothed to me with this basket. And one of them received it on behalf of all of them. So and the sages said that the sisters in that are not married, but the other 3 women are yes married. Okay, looks easy, right? Minani Mili. Where's this? Where do we get this from? Well, Amar Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama has his own source for this. He says the Makra has a pasuk Isha lachis leisikach litzra. The pasuk says that a person can't marry a woman and her sister litzra to be a tzara, to be a rival wife. A Torah Amra, the Torah says the way Rami Bar Chama learns the pasuk. If they're going to become rival wives, then neither of them should be married. Okay. He has a mamash pasuk that tells us that he can't marry both of them at the same time. Amalei Rava. Rava says 1 second. That it's impossible to read it like that. Because when you go further in the verse, it says Yachan and Dixiv Vinichasu and the Farshis Isis Mikaravama. What does it mean that they'll be cut off from the nation? The person that does that will be cut off from the nation. How does he get cut off from the nation if the marriage didn't even take effect? Yeah. Before Mount Sinai, yeah. It was also outside of Israel. No, before Mount Sinai. It's possible that laws only needed to be kept in Israel. Yeah. The way the Rebbe learns it was that you have to the following of the Torah before Mount Sinai. The patriarchs followed the Torah, but that was like an extra stringency. But what they really needed to do was to keep the word, because he gave his word that took precedent over following the Torah. So okay. How could he be chayav kares if the marriage didn't take place? So according to Rava, the way that the verse would work would be simple. He marries one of them, and then if he has relations with the other one, so then that's considered that he violated this rule. According to the way Rami Bacham is learning the pasuk, he'll never be able to violate this rule because it never takes effect. So how do they get cut off? How do you get a punishment if it never is violated? Right? So it must be that it's talking about one after another. He marries first the mother or the daughter, and then he goes and he can't really do a marriage on the next one because there's no such thing, but he would live with the other one, and that would be, then he would get kares. Just like there's a person can't live with the married one, someone else's wife, right? So this would be like this sister or mother or daughter.
So the second one would lap that
is without Kiddushin. Right? Just the relations would have been prohibited. Rava explains it like this. The pasuk is talking about one after another. How would he explain the Mishnah? How would Rami Bacham explain the Mishnah? It would be like Rabba says. Very interesting rule. Rabba says that if you can't do one after another, if you try to do them both at once, it also won't work. You see, simultaneously is not going to squeeze it in. If he marries the mother, then he tries to marry the daughter, this Kiddushin won't take effect. So if you try to do it simultaneous, try to do both the mother and daughter at the same time, then none of them work. If you can't do one after the other, you can't do one at a time. You can't do them both together. You can't do one after the other. You can't do them both together either. What happens if you try to do them both together? None of them work.
Mother and daughter separately?
You can marry the mother, or you can marry the daughter, but you can't marry the mother and then afterwards the daughter, or the daughter and then afterwards the mother. You can't marry two relatives like that. So let's say you try to marry them both at the same time. So which one is going to be married? None of them. That's what Rabba says. Rabba says. No, you don't need atonement. It didn't work.
Yeah.
You can't marry a woman at the same time if they're not family.
Yeah. And we had the case before. He gave a basket to 5 women. And what was that? What? What's a no? Oh, the relatives. Yeah. Okay. Gufa was taught. We'll go back to explain something that a Moira discussed. This match as well. Amar Rabba. Rabba says, we're going to have a whole page over here just of asking questions on Rabba's rule. Well, it's a half a page. So it starts like this.
Excuse me. Is it a common practice to want to marry the mother and the daughter? Is it ever done by other nations? Or is it also, it's not a common thing to hear about.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
I don't know.
Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
There are cases that they propose that are not likely to happen. It's just one of those cases. Is this one of those, or is this a common practice that the Jews say, they don't marry their daughters mothers at the same time.
You know, in Egypt, the pharaohs married their sisters.
Right.
Now, in the Torah, when it says you can't marry your sister, I mean that that's what they were doing in Egypt. You can't do that.
Incas did that too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Jews did that too before the Torah.
Married their sisters.
Royalty in
Was
Europe.
that, really?
Their sisters.
Yesterday, I went to my brother's thing, this senior event in Shalom Harbor. Anyway, I'm walking with my two kids. So one of the older fellas says, "Is that your sons or your grandsons?" Anyway. So I told this to someone else. He said, "Yeah, it's nothing." He said when his mother had his brother, he went to the hospital to see, and they said, "Congratulations on your son." No, it's my brother. Anyway, so Esvei Abaya. Abaya has a question on the statement of Rabba. Rabba's the teacher. Rabba said that if you can't do one after the other, you can't do it simultaneously. That's his. Of course, you can't do it. What he's saying is that when you try to do it simultaneous, that none of them work. That's what he's telling me. That I don't even get one in. You try to do both, you don't even get one. Well, Abaya has a question that says, we had this recently. It says if someone gives extra meiser, so the example that Rashi is giving is that he measures out 5 portions. Now, he measures out 5 portions. Meiser for that would be 1/2 a portion, right? Right? He gives a whole 1/5. He gives extra. He gives double the amount of meiser.
20% instead of
gives 20% instead of 10%. Well, what he did was he fixed all the fruit in his that he needed meiser to be taken from, and therefore he's allowed to eat that. But the meiser itself has half of it as meiser, and half of it is just regular tevel that meiser was never taken from that. So it says the meiser, the payers are fixed, but the meiser is messed up. He's going to need to take some meiser from somewhere else for half of this, to include this in somewhere. Well, the problem is, why do we say that there's any meiser at all? According to Rabbah, you take meiser once, and then you try to take meiser again. It's absolutely nothing. So if you take it all together, it should be totally nothing, according to Rabbah's ruling.
Good question.
Oh. Well, yeah. Esav had some other things going on. Yeah. So, Amalei. So this was Rava. Rava responds. Amalei Shani Meiser D'isi Lachatzayin. You see, the way that this works with Meiser is that you could take Meiser, you could slice it in different ways. I could say half of, I could say 50% of this is meiser, another half is not. I could say it like that. Or I could say 50% of each grain is meiser. So since I could slice this different ways, so I'm not going to say that none of it is meiser. I can say that the other half is meiser. Because if you slice it the other way, then it will work. So it's not exactly the same case as that now would be bevasachas. Okay, that would be different than by the Kiddushin, which doesn't work one after the other, because by Kiddushin, it only works one after the other. It only works in the same way, and then you try to do it simultaneous. Over here, there's a different way of slicing it. Umar says, 1 second, but you can't do that for Meiser Behema. Because Meiser Behema, you can't say half of this animal should be Meiser and another half of that animal should be Meiser. Meiser Behema, the way it worked was that they made a hole in a fence and they let the animals go through and they would count 1, 2, 3. And then when they got to 10, they would say it's Meiser. You can't say half of the 10th and half of the 11th should be Meiser. That doesn't work like that. and you can't do it one after the other. However, V'amar Rava, and Rava says, Yatsu Shnayim Ba'asiri, B'karan Asiri. Let's say two animals jumped through the hole at the same time, and they called it 10. He said 10. What happens? Well, that's Asir V'acharasim Urafim Sabazah. The 10th one is there, and the 11th one is there, and it's a little bit confused. And what you're going to have to do is figure out how to do this. They're going to have to let it get a mum, and then they're going to bring the next one as a shlamim, and they're going to. But basically, one of them became consecrated as meiser for the animals. So Gemara answers this problem according to Rabbah. This is a huge problem, right? Because according to Rabbah, if you can't do one after the other, then you can't do it at the same time. So none of them should be according to Rabbah. The Gemara answers Shani meiser bein b'disa b'tos. Well, it's not true that you can't do one after the other, because you really can do one after the other. If you made a mistake, it actually becomes meiser. How is that? The Tanan. So in the Mishnah, Karlachi Asiri. Let's say you counted 7, 8, 10. Skip 9. Well, Asiri Chi, and then you said Oive 9 for the next one, right? That's really the 10th one.
Within the Vayikra, it says, Mareno, if you,
Right, Tamura.
Yeah. So how can Tamura work?
Tamura actually does work.
That's what I'm saying.
Tamura is yeah.
That's the contrary. It's the opposite.
No, Tamura works b'zeh chazeh. It's something that doesn't work b'zeh chazeh. It doesn't work.
So it's the reverse.
So and then lachadasar asiri, and then you're finally trying to get it right. You skipped number 9, then you added the number 9 after number 10. I mean, after you said number 10, which number 9 was really the 10th. Then for the 11th, you called it 10. It's the first time you said you said 10 twice, one for the 9 and one for the 11th, and then for the 10th you said 9. So shlashtem mekudash, and all of them become kodesh. So since it works b'zeh as you see, it works b'zeh. So therefore, that's not a kasha. How it works b'vasachas. The Gemara says 1 second. What about a carbon taida? That it also doesn't work by mistake, and you also can't do it one after another. V'itmar, and was stated taida shnishchata al shmeinim chalis. If a taida, a carbon taida, which is a Thanksgiving offering, it's an animal that's brought, and there's 40 loaves of bread. 30 of them are matzah, and 10 of them are chametz, are brought together with this carbon taida. And what he did was, instead of bringing 40, he brought 80. Chizkiya was a teacher of Rabbi Yochanan. He says that there were 40 amongst the 80 become consecrated. That's going to be a problem with what we're learning, because really, if you can't consecrate another 40 after the first 40, then you can't consecrate 40 out of the 80 either. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, nothing is consecrated. Gemara answers, if he says 40 out of the 80 should be consecrated, then fine, kachi, that's perfectly fine. He's saying 40, it's only 40. If he says that 40 should not be consecrated unless the other 40 unless all 80 are consecrated, then like kachu. That would fit very good with Rabbah. The machlekes is when he doesn't explain what he's saying. Mar Savra, one of them says, the reason why he has extra loaves over there is always just in case. Yeah, it's like your wife sends you to the store, and she didn't give you exactly the details, which type of peppers to get. So you have to get all of them, just in case you don't want to go back. And I think I have to go back to return them my hair. It's a big problem. Yeah. And like this, right? Mar Sava, the other opinion says, no, he wanted to have an extra, the Thanksgiving offering. He wanted to bring extra loaves, make it even bigger. And so then, if he wants to make it even bigger, Rabbi Yochanan says that it's nothing, because he can't do it any bigger than what's prescribed. The Gemara says, why does Rava need to explain what Rabbah was teaching Typically, Kiddushin Shem Surim Lebianinu. The following Gemara that we're about to learn is going to explain, according to Rava, much better than Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama said, we're learning from a pasuk. Pasuk doesn't tell it to me exactly, so Rava said that Rabba will explain it according to Rami Bar Chama. How does that work? Because according to Rabba, if you can't do one after the other, you also can't do it simultaneously. That's why, according to Rami Bar Chama, it won't work. So the Gemara is saying, but Rava is going to have his own reason, as you'll see in a moment. Kiddushin Shem Yisrael L'Bia. We'll explain that in a second. The Gemara answers L'Dvar to Rami Bar Chama. He was just helping out Rami Bar Chama, explaining how would it work according to him. But according to Rava, you don't need any of this explanation that we said. Itmar, let's take a look. We'll learn more about this in a second. What are you worried about?
So according to Rava, if you can't do it simultaneously, if you can't do it simultaneously,
you can't do it one after the other. You can't do it simultaneously. So you can't do one after the other. You can't marry a mother and her daughter. So when you do the first marriage on the mother, you're married. Then you want to go ahead and marry the daughter.
Oh, okay.
It says no, you can't. So let's say you try to marry both of them at the same time and fit them both in without getting the violation. So none of them are married. That's what Rabba was saying.
I just want to marry your mother and your sister at the same time.
I forget.
Neither one will work.
Yeah, but it won't work even if you wanted to do one of them.
Right.
Alone.
So that's the exception to this. No, you know what I mean?
No, it won't work at all.
At all. Right, but this one would.
Yeah.
This one is a normal mother with
Right.
a normal daughter. You can marry one.
Yeah.
Marry the daughter first and then try to do the mother.
You could do that as well.
That will work. But
That-
it stops there.
Stops right there. It's the same thing.
As long as it's not your sister.
Right. Yeah. Could have been one of those families where the mother and the daughter, they go together everywhere. If you're gonna marry me, you have to marry my daughter as well. You know, one of those.
If it's not a blood daughter.
Then that would be acceptable. Yeah, just an adopted daughter. Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on over here. Itmar. We have a statement. It goes like this. It's going to be a machlekes Abaye and Rava. Remember Abaye and Rava? Who do we paskin like? So what's going to happen is
Where the trophies? What
did you say?
we have Shalom Drew in here. So one of the 6 cases is this case over here. This is a very unique Gemara where we're going to follow Abaye at the end. Itmar statement goes like this: Kiddushin Shem Yisrael L'Bia. See, Kiddushin is a betrothal. It's not actually marrying the woman yet. It's not bringing her into the house. It's just a betrothal. And betrothal just means that she's designated to it's sort of like engaged, but it's much stricter than just engaged. It's if she does have relations with another man, it's a death penalty. So it's the beginning stage of marriage. Let's say he does Kiddushin on a woman that he's not going to be able to finalize the marriage. He'll never be able to consummate the marriage. So does the Kiddushin start? A Kiddushin that won't lead to being consummated. Does the Kiddushin start or is the Kiddushin nothing? We'll see in a moment. So it goes like this. Kiddushin Shem Yisrael L'Bia. Abaye says Habi Kiddushin. It is considered a marriage. Rava says La Habi Kiddushin. It's not considered a marriage. It's not considered a betrothal. Now, let's go back to the Mishnah just to see how this came up over here. The Mishnah said that if a man marries a woman and her mother and her daughter, so it's not considered a marriage. We explained it because you can't marry one after another, and also you can't do it simultaneously. According to Rava, right now we have a brand new pshat. The reason why it doesn't work is not because you can't do one after the other, therefore you can't do it simultaneously. The reason why it doesn't work is because you'll never be able to follow through on this marriage. So you don't have any Kiddushin. It's a Kiddushin. even if the Kiddushin works, but because you can't take it to the next step, you can't consummate that marriage, so therefore the Kiddushin is invalid as well. There's no Kiddushin because you can't finish it. According to Abaya, no, the Kiddushin maybe takes effect. Could have taken effect. You just can't consummate that marriage. Okay, let's take a look further. Amar Rava. Rava says, Barahina Asperli. Barahina explained to me my opinion. In other words, I got my opinion from his source. It says, Kikach ish isha uba'ala. When a man marries a woman and he lives with her, Kiddushin ha'masurin l'biyah havi Kiddushin. That means in order to even have the kiyikach, which we learned kicha, is kesef, and even to have that initial stage of betrothal, it has to be able to end up with a consummation. Otherwise, there's nothing there. Kiddushin shein masurin l'biyah levi Kiddushin. Okay, now Tanan, we'll start in our Mishnah. A mekadosh yishabita yishava chaysa. If a man marries a woman and her daughter, or a woman and her sister, ka'achas, together, ain't a mekudashas. They're not married. Ha'achas mi yishabita, or mi yishava chaysa mekudashas. 1 second. Look at what's happening now. Let's say he says, I want to marry one of you. And he gives Kiddushin to a shliach or something. That way he doesn't know exactly which one it was. Marrying either the mother or the daughter. I'm giving steps. So it sounds like it would work. Mekudeshes. He didn't say both of them. He's saying one of them. 1 second. If he's betrothed to one, then he can't live with the other one. He never said which one it is. So we don't know which one it is. So he's married to one of them, and he can't consummate that marriage. Because if he lives with the daughter, maybe he was really married to the mother. He can't live with the daughter. If he lives with the mother, maybe he was really married to the daughter, right? He can't go, can never consummate this marriage.
What if you do it anyway?
That's a punishment there, right? Of course. So, Tiyuf to the Rava, the diuk, the implication of what it says in our Mishnah is a kasha on Rava. Because according to Rava, any marriage that cannot be consummated is not even any betrothal is not even a good betrothal. Amalach Rava says, 1 second, let's go further. Let's read further in the Mishnah. We have a story in the Mishnah. It went like this. It's a story of 5 women. And they have 2 sisters amongst them. So there's 3 women plus 2 sisters. This man comes by, takes a basket of figs. It was theirs. It was also Shemitah year, which means it was Hefker. And so he acquires it. He says, all of you should be married to me with this basket. Sages said, the sisters are not married.
Yeah, that's right.
Others are. How are the sisters not married? But the sisters aren't married, but the others are. What's the case? Did he say all of you should be acquired, or no, all of you should be?
It's interesting to use the word nachrias.
Yeah, nachrias just means strangers. It doesn't mean
but it also often means.
Yeah, but
This doesn't line up with consecration of the animals. Someone designates an animal that for some reason he can't give it. He has to replace it with another animal.
Right.
Here we
yeah. This is a different story. The same word is used in Kiddushin as consecration, but it's a different law. So if he says all of you should be acquired, this is 1 second. We have a rule. This would be like saying you and a donkey should be married. Now that doesn't work because whenever you mix in something that's impossible, so the whole thing becomes impossible. So how could he say all of you should be married to me when 2 of the sisters are not able to be married to him? It should be the whole thing should be nullified. Right? Oh. Elalav, rather, the Amar Lahu, he said, Achas mikem ktani. It must have been that he didn't really say all of you should be married to me. What he said was the 3 of you and 1 of the sisters should be married. That's probably what he said. Now, okay, and it came out that none of the sisters are married, even though he only said one of them. He didn't specify which one. 1 second. Really, if he can't end up marrying both, if he can't end up marrying any of them, he can't consummate that marriage. So none of them are that's a clear proof to Rava. It's a clear proof to Rava that none of them are considered married, even though he only said he's marrying one of them. But because he didn't say which one, and so that's the reason why they're not married. Okay, the Gemara concludes like this.
What's the issue of saying just any one?
Of the sisters. Right. The problem is which one? So we don't know. So he's going to take one of them. So maybe it's his wife's sister.
Oh,
and he can't live with his wife's sister. So
But if we know for a fact.
if we know which one it is, it would be no problem.
Yeah, but if we know for three that none of them have any.
Right. So the three strangers he's married to. 2 sisters he's not married to. Now, even though, according to the way Rav is learning it, is that he only said he's marrying only one of them, but he's not married. He's really not married to any of them. So the Gemara says like this. Well, the Rava Kasha Resha. So Rava, we had a question from the Resha, from the beginning of the Mishnah. The beginning of the Mishnah made it look like that if the mother and the daughter, only if he says mother and daughter is he not married. But if he says either mother or daughter, then he wouldn't be married. That's what it looks like. It's a kasha. Abaya kasha seifan. According to Abaya, you have a question from this last one when the 5 women, that it looks like the reason why he's not married to the 2 sisters is because he said, I'm not married to one of them. According to Abaya would say, well, he should be married to them, to that one at least, even though he won't be able to consummate it. It's a question on Abaya. The Gemara starts like this. Abaya matar satamei. We answer from the last. Moshe does this sometimes. It answers from the last. Yeah. We had a Gemara actually when it said, why did he answer the last one first? Abaya says his reasoning. Someone marries a mother and a daughter, or a woman and her sister, as together. They're not married. But if he marries just one of them, doesn't specify which one, then it is considered a betrothal. Can't consummate it, but according to Abaya, that's considered a betrothal. You'll have to get a divorce. But let's say he says, the one of you, or the one that would be permissible to me to consummate that marriage, then he won't be married to either of them. My Sanami, we would have a story. You see, we added in those words. The one that would be able to consummate the marriage would be married, so will be betrothed. So then it knocks out both of them. You even have a story of 5 women. 2 of them were sisters. The one that is eligible to me should be betrothed. The sages said sisters are not married. Okay, that's the way Abaya is reading of the Mishnah, and it fits perfectly according to his, after he amends it. Rava Matar Satamei, and Rava answers it like this. Someone marries one of the mother and the daughters, or one of the woman and her sister. Nasa, that's as if as if he married both of them. That's the way Rava amends it. That's how he answers the question. And they're not married. We even have a story. The 5 women, which 2 of them were sisters. Then the end of the Mishnah fits perfectly according to Rava.
So they both make a little change.
They both make a little change, and then it fits. Tashma. Come and listen. Makadishas bita stam. Someone marries off his daughter. Now, problem is he has a few daughters. So he tells the guy, he says, will you marry my daughter? The guy tells him, I want to marry one of your daughters. So he says, okay, and he accepts the Kiddushin. Now, which daughter got married? The one that peels the potatoes without a lot of the potato on it? most eligible. Okay. It says like this: Eina Bageres Bechlal. It can't be the ones that are older, because 12 over 12 and a half, because he doesn't have the right to marry her. Okay, Haktanis. But the young ones, Bechlal, they are married. 1 second. According to Rava, how could they be married? You have a doubt which one it is. According to Rava, if there's a doubt, it means it's never going to be able to be consummated. There should be no marriage. My Kiddushin Shemasir and Labiyanu. It's Kiddushin that can't be consummated. Give to the Rava. It's a question on Rava. Amalach Rava. Rava responds. This was a case where he only had 2 daughters, an older one and a younger one. It says, it says daughters. It says my beigers to Alma. Gives us this grammar term, which you can use a plural when you're talking about in general. So what it means is the older girls are not married. Why are you saying the older girls? He only had 1 daughter, only had 1 older daughter. What it means is the older girls in general cases, in case a lot of fathers do this, in all of those cases, then all those older girls will not be married. In other words, all of those multiple cases of the same story of just one. That's how it interests.
At this point, they wouldn't go like the order, like the oldest first.
Not necessarily.
So
Only in by Lavan.
today is there's if you don't specify the actual daughter who's going to be married, is that because there might be a suffix that there might be a zika, right?
That Zika is going to come up in a moment. Over here, for some reason, you just didn't specify.
What if the father pulls the Levine?
He what?
Pulls
Right,
Levine.
he gives the wrong daughter. Right. That would, according to Rava, none of them are married. Right. And
They call it off.
right. According to Rava, if there would be more than 1 daughter, yeah. According to Rava, none of them would be married.
Yaakov didn't do it. He was holy, but
You're asking about Yaakov.
What
Yaakov
if-
was
what if
told he's marrying Rachel, and they gave him Leah. So
but we learned that the man has to approve the
right.
So what if he gets
So
away
he
with
was
it
tricked.
and he marries the daughter that because the guy didn't know which daughter it was.
Yeah.
He marries the daughter, and then they have relations or they have kids or whatever. Is it something annulled if they find out later?
That's a problem.
By the morning or something.
It's a problem. It's a problem. Yeah, someone to learn that the reason why Reuven sinned, he was the first child, it's because he thought that Yaakov thought that he was living with Rachel, and that's why Reuven ends up committing a sin with Bilhah, possibly. So, assumptions.
It said that it was that moving the bed was such like a big
Right.
Avera that it was comparable to the
Right.
living, but he never did.
Right. Right. Two interpretations there.
Some people
Right.
hold by the
I think so. Yachi Maila Memra. So what's the chiddush? If there's only one daughter there, that's possible. What are you telling me? The chiddush here is the older girl sent her father as a shliach to marry her off. We said that a son wouldn't make a father a shliach, but the daughter maybe would make the father a shliach to accept Kiddushin for her. I could have thought. So now when this fellow shows up, says, I want to marry your daughter, the father was already a shliach to marry off his older daughter as well. He really doesn't have the rights to do that, but because she gave him the rights to accept it, so now she is maybe he accepted the Kiddushin for the older daughter. Kamash Malana comes to tell us he would never leave something that he would be able to get benefit from. When he marries off his younger daughter, he gets the 5 cents from this guy that he gets to keep the pruta, and he keeps it. But just to be a shliach, so he would rather marry off his younger daughter where he keeps the money than the older daughter where he has to give her the money. Mila Yaskina and the Gemara says, are we not dealing with where the daughter told the father, you can keep the money as well? So now he's getting the money also for the Kiddushin. Where it says, he would not leave a mitzvah that he's able to perform. Rashi quotes a pasuk, there's a mitzvah on a father to marry off his daughters, and to do something that wasn't a mitzvah on him. His older daughter, that's her own problem. It wasn't a mitzvah on him. She's got to go find a match. I don't know how she finds a match. I guess she goes dancing on Yom Kippur or Tubav. Right? That says Yom Kippur as well. I don't know, right?
Mix up the water by the well.
Okay, Tashima. Let's say there's a guy that has 2 families. He has a 2 wives, 2 groups of daughters from 2 wives. So he has a first wife and a second wife. So from his first wife, he has some daughters. From his second wife, he has some daughters. So there's 2 groups over there. So he says like this, I married off my older daughter. Okay. Tells the guy. The guy, I guess, gives him money and to marry off. He says, okay, my older daughter. She that's what Meir says. This sounds like when they changed the recipe for Coke. It was like something called New Coke. And this guy came in. He says, "Can I have a Coke?" The guy says, "Do you want a new Coke, which is now the old Coke, or the old Coke, which is now the new Coke?" He says, "Just give me a Pepsi." That was an advertisement for Pepsi. Anyway, over here, he says, he says, we don't know. Is it the oldest of the oldest group? Is it the oldest of the youngest group? Or maybe it's the youngest of the oldest group, which is older than the older of the youngest group. My older daughter, right?
What does he mean by that?
What does he mean? So all of them are prohibited to get married because he married off his daughter. All of them prohibited to get married, except for the youngest of the youngest. She's the only one that we know wasn't married. She's not older than anyone. That's what Rameir says. Okay, now, this is a question on Rava, because according to Rava, whenever you have a doubt about who was betrothed, so then you can't marry any of them. And that means that the whole thing is invalid. According to Rava, Kiddushin Shem Yisrael L'Biyah is nothing. So why do we say they're all prohibited? They should be all permitted. Because that marriage is nothing. The answer that originally we knew which daughter it was. We just lost that information. We had it written down somewhere. I dropped the paper. And we don't know which one it is now. It says, not that it says, he says, I don't know. And it doesn't say, I didn't know. It says, I don't know now. Can't remember which one. So if that's the case, so what's the chiddush? Of course, the marriage took place. It says, Lafukim with Rabbi Yaisi. By the way, we only said the opinion of Rabbi Meir. What about Rabbi Yaisi? Rabbi Yaisi says, that a person would never mix into a doubt, which according to Rabbi Yaisi, his opinion would be that the only one that's married is the oldest of the oldest. Because a person would never make any doubt about that. He would always clarify which one it is. So Kamash Malan is coming to Reb Meir is coming to tell me the machasin is nafshelis feka that a person would do this. Okay, the next 2 pieces over here are a little bit more complicated. I think we should leave it. And but ultimately, it's going to end with a proof against Rava. It's going to pass like a baya. Okay.
Thanks for the preview.
spoiler.
No one is gonna do it. We'll find out.
Good, good,